May 1934. An old tent was standing on the elevation of 21,000 feet, 6,400 meters, barely withstanding the fierce gusts of wind. Inside the tent, 3 men were arguing. 2 were Sherpas, the third a Yorkshireman. Sherpas were trying to dissuade the Yorkshireman from his mad plan, explaining in all possible ways that conquering Everest is impossible, and what is worse, the attempt can be fatal. They argued far into the night. Then the Yorkshireman said, "Wait here for 10 days, and if I don't come back, return by yourselves." The next morning, he set out to finish his solitary battle with Everest, carrying with him 3 loaves of bread, 2 tins of oatmeal, and a small Union Jack. Over a week later, when the monsoon broke out, Sherpas returned to the Rongbuk Monastery, and from there, the news seeped out to the world. Captain Maurice Wilson was dead. Maurice Wilson was born in Bradford on April 21, 1898. He was the third of 4 sons born to Mark and Sarah Wilson. Mark was a worsted textile overlooker. However, later he became a manufacturer in his own right, operating out of Holm Top Mills. From his earliest years, Maurice enjoyed the comfort and security of a solid middle-class home and upbringing. Being educated at the Carlton Road Secondary School, by the time he was 12 he could speak French and German with great fluency. This flair for quickly picking up a language was to prove of great value to him later in his journeys among the Himalaya. In 1914, Maurice was about to start on his apprenticeship in the world of wool and cotton, when the World War I broke out. The day after his 18th birthday, he enlisted as a private in the 5th Battalion of the West Yorkshire Regiment. His own military career was short but distinguished. Wilson himself commanded a machine gun post close to the front. For his devotion and bravery, Wilson was awarded the Military Cross. But on July 19, on the outskirts of Maturan, he was seriously wounded by machine gun fire while leading an Allied counter-attack. For 10 days he was too ill to move, but his splendid physique pulled him through, and he was eventually moved to Red Cross Hospital near Boulogne, and from there to Manchester. His left arm never properly healed, and he took great pains to conceal this, and few people knew of the hours of torment it gave him. In autumn 1918, Wilson, however, rejoined his battalion, which was still near the front line in Flanders. The rest of his service up to the signing of the armistice was uneventful. In July 1919, he was demobilized and returned to his home in Bradford. Like many of his generation, he could not forget the horrors of the trenches and was unable to fit into civilian life again. Finding his existence in textile office too boring, after a few months he left Bradford to seek his fortune in London. London was different, but after about 18 months he made a decision to immigrate. He went first to America, where he spent several months in New York. From there he crossed the continent to San Francisco, then he crossed the South Pacific to New Zealand. Here he stayed for several years. He spent a couple of months selling scales as a traveling salesman. For some time even sold a quack medicine, which he himself prepared and bottled. He tried farming, but after 18 months he sold his farm and moved into Wellington. Here he bought up a small ladies' dress shop and achieved considerable success. His dress shop flourished, but even that didn't bring him satisfaction, and on the spur of the moment he sold out and caught one of the Suez-routed mailboats to England. At Bombay, a small party of Indians boarded the vessel. Soon Wilson learned that they were yogis. At first he showed only a polite and remote interest in their philosophy of self-discipline and self-denial, but as the weeks passed he talked to them fairly frequently, He became more and more interested in their explanations of occult, which enabled men to endure extreme physical ordeals without ill effect. When the vessel docked at Southampton, Wilson said goodbye to his Indian acquaintances who had, with their oriental mysticism, helped him to while away the time. They never met again. Back in London, he hoped to start life anew. He had no definite plans, but he had, in his decade of wanderings, set aside enough money to live in reasonable comfort while he looked around. Within a few days of his landing, he had met and become firm friends with two people who were to play a vital role in the approaching climax of his life. Wilson met Leonard Evans quite by chance. He was thinking of buying a car and had been given his name as a reliable dealer. They soon got talking about things other than cars, and Evans invited Wilson to his house in Maida Vale. There he introduced him to his wife Enid, whose personality made a lasting impression on Wilson. Soon after Wilson had taken rooms on the outskirts of London, he went north to Bradford. His father had died a year or two before, his mother was an invalid, and his brothers were carving out successful careers in the textile industry. His family were overjoyed to see him back, but he found that he now had little in common with them. They begged him to return to the industry, but alas. Wilson returned to London, wondering what was he looking for in life. He took his troubles to his newfound friends, and all Leonard and Enid could offer was their friendship. This friendship, however, saved Wilson from a complete nervous breakdown. But about 3 months after his return from New Zealand, Wilson's health began suddenly to deteriorate. He lost weight and developed a racking cough. His visits to Maida Vale became less and less frequent. Then, suddenly, he disappeared, leaving only a short cryptic note. "I must shake this thing off. If I come back, you will know that I am all right. If you don't see me again, you will know that I am dead." His message caused great anxiety to his friends, but there was nothing they could do but sit back and await events. He took his troubles not to a doctor, but to a certain man who remains nameless in all Wilson's papers. This man had 17 years before been told by every doctor he consulted that he had only 3 months to live. He refused to accept their opinion, and with the help of a certain unorthodox treatment, recovered within a month. After his escape from death, he decided to devote his life and his very considerable fortune to propagating the treatment that had in case proved so amazingly effective. His treatment consisted of 2 things only: faith and fasting. The treatment worked, and he never accepted money. Within a few years, his method cured over 100 men and women who suffered from diseases such as cancer, arthritis, diabetes, tuberculosis, and venereal disease. Wilson fasted for 35 days, then prayed to God to make him a new man. And God, it seemed to him, had done exactly that. Within a couple of months he was well, both physically and mentally. But his miraculous treatment was soon to become responsible for his death. It seemed to him that he had panacea for all the malaise of the world, yet the world would not readily accept it. The only chance of making people listen to him was to give them some striking and sensational demonstration of the practical effectiveness of his beliefs. Once his fast was over, Wilson spent a couple of months recuperating in the Black Forest. Here in Freiburg, he came across, quite by chance, an old newspaper cutting of the 1924 Mount Everest expedition. He returned to England and at once got in touch with Enid and Leonard Evans. They were delighted to see him and realized at once that he was now restored to health and also to happiness. Wilson told them of his miraculous treatment, fasting and faith. But the couple was doubtful. Wilson was expecting the type of a reaction. "I've got a theory to prove and I intend to try and prove it. I will show the world what faith can do. He then pulled the newspaper cutting out of his wallet and told about 1924 Everest expedition. Now, can you guess what I'm going to do? I will climb Mount Everest alone.